Hello, my friends, and welcome to Kitsune Readings, where your questions find answers.
Hello everyone, Ryu here. It is time for Chapter 3 from the 21 Lessons of Merlin. This one is called The Box. We've got some nice art over here. It's really cool, looks kind of like a tarot card there. In this case, it would be the Hermit card. Now, there are a few who know where the magic wand of Mathwin grows in the grove. The Mabanagion or something like that. Mabanagion. Well, I don't know if that's how it's pronounced, but that's how I pronounce it. So, moving on. It had been well over 1 week since my ordeal at the Giant's Cave. During that time, my mind had fluctuated between belief and disbelief, willingness and unwillingness, between wonder and fear. My friend Hiltud had listened faithfully to the entire account, without so much as saying a word, but it was obvious by his nervous expressions that he neither believed nor approved of the events which had befallen me. Hiltud was never one for adventures of any kind, preferring to remain inside with his books to the uncertainties of the world at large. In addition, he was completely devoted to the brethren of Bryshon and their monistic ways of life, having embraced the Christian faith from an early age without question, something I had failed to do. So, it came as little surprise when I learned that Hiltud had recounted my adventures to the High Abbot of our small monastery on Tentacle, under guise of concern for the salvation of my mortal soul as a result. I was promptly called before His Grace to give a thorough accounting of myself, a meeting whose outcome was to be altogether more than expected. Well, it was clear that on account of his religious station, the abbot could not openly tolerate my interests in magical apprenticeship. He nevertheless did seem to possess some genuine insight into my importance in Merlin's plans. After much time spent in talk, the final result of the meeting was clear. The abbot would allow my meetings with the druid, so long as the lessons gleaned at his hands neither desecrated nor conflicted with the teachings of the Christian Church. Even so, he asked me to have no further part in the matter, word or deed, and to this I readily agreed, relieved at having received support of any kind, where I had expected only scorn and condemnation. Leaving the abbot's quarters, I was overcome with confusion at this strange turn of events, since it was quite clear there was more behind the scene than meets the eye. The abbot had obviously kept much cloaked in silence. Perplexed or no, I immediately found myself at liberty to pursue my mystical interests and inclinations unbridled, yet with no open support of any kind from my guardians. To compensate for this, I often recited an ancient axiom which Merlin had once taught me. A druid is dependent upon no man, and answerable solely to the voice of his own conscience. And so such matters were easily put to rest, especially since the philosophy fit in well with my own spirit of individuality. But as untutored days became directionless weeks, I experienced a growing need to see Merlin again, to feel safe once more within his plans. Consider well before you call upon me, unless the occasion be an urgent one, the druid had instructed me, for his departure. But now I was beyond patience, needing answers to so many new questions. A meeting could be delayed no longer. I went to bed that night, consoled by my resolution to seek out my new teacher immediately the following morning. The chill night sky was giving way to dawn, as I was awakened suddenly by a persistent tapping at the window by my bed. Rubbing the sleep from my eyes, I opened the shutters and peered into the pre-dawn gloom. There, strutting back and forth on the window's ledge, paced the great raven Solomon. I could hardly contain my delight as I reached out to stroke his black feathers. But before my hand could make contact, he dropped from his beak a single acorn and glided silently away. Knowing somehow that this event could only be a message from Merlin, I hurriedly dressed myself and made off down the orchard path to confirm my intuition. And sure enough, when I reached the meadow clearing, there sat the druid under the ancient oak playing his wooden flute. The music was slow and melodic, like something from a dream, having a captivating effect, which no doubt accounted for the fact that neither Merlin nor Solomon seemed aware of my presence. I sat down quietly a few feet away and curbed my impatience by letting the spell of music have its way with me. After a while the playing ceased, and Merlin sat motionless with his eyes closed. "Did you enjoy my melodies, little one?" he asked at last, opening his eyes to greet me with a friendly smile. "Yes, I did, very much. Never have I heard such music before." "Will you teach me to play just like that some day?" I blurted out all at once. "Why, yes, indeed," he replied calmly. "For in time you must learn all such things that are part of my craft. But for the moment your need is simply to be patient. One cannot push a river, after all." The druid smiled a broad smile. "Tell me, young Arthur, did you learn anything of importance from our last meeting together?" Even though the question was not one I had expected, that seemed important just by the curious tone of his asking. Clearing my throat, I began slowly. "I learned that there exist fantastic beings of power which dwell eternally between stone and sea, but who can have no authority over us so long as we show no fear towards them. You showed me that fear must be overcome before respect can be earned." I racked my memory trying to select words and phrases which might show my worthiness as a student. "And that a druid must always be free in his search for the truth," I tacked on. "Merlin, I do want to learn from you more than anything, please believe me. I was so afraid that my words would sound like nothing but words." Merlin studied me silently for a moment before motioning that I come closer. "I am truly proud of you, little one," he said gently while lifting me onto his knee. "Never could I have expected more worthy a reply, for your answer to my most difficult question tells me that you see not only with your eyes, but with your spirit as well. And so long as you continue to draw upon your inner knowledge, there can be little doubt that you will achieve the highest of goals." "I can set before you as my apprentice, perhaps more successfully than even I myself could." That was the first time Merlin ever referred to me as his apprentice, and I was filled with confidence and reassurance by his words. Just then Solomon flew over and alighted opposite me on Merlin's other leg, letting out one long burst of chatter, as if to confirm what his friend just said. We all laughed. "And now to business," Merlin exclaimed as I hopped to the ground, and Solomon flew off to find a more secure landing. "For today, Arthur, I have a surprise, which was made especially for you." He lifted out a small red bundle from one of the many pockets in his robe and handed it to me. I forced myself to unwrap it slowly, despite my excitement. "Since you are now a student, it is only natural that you should look the proper part," Merlin said as I bent down to examine the small, finely sewn garment before me. It was a robe, very much like the one which Merlin himself wore, except that its color was the rich green of a pine tree in winter. I lost no time in shedding my well-worn monk's frock and exchanging it for my new green skin, and it fit exactly. "This be no ordinary clothing, boy," Merlin began, "for it is spun of the finest fiber from the sacred isles of Iona. and dyed with the secret essences of the plants grown only in the most holy of places. As a symbol of your new commitment, this is my gift to you. I spent the next few minutes admiring myself and even made a quick trip to the spring to take in my reflection. At last, when the initial excitement had lapsed, I returned to my place on the grass by Merlin to pose a new question. Why must it be that my robe is olive green while yours is the color of sky on an autumn day? Why wasn't mine made more like your own? From his reaction, Merlin appeared to have been expecting a comparison of this sort, for there was no hesitation over his reply. Green is the color of new life and of growth, he stated. It represents perfectly all those new tasks which you must accomplish at my hands. Think for a moment of the grass and the growing things all around you, or of tree buds in springtime. Can you not see why your new robe could only be such a color as it is? Yes, I do see, I replied at once, since the explanation did seem to make sense despite my ignorance of such things. But there will come a time when I'll have grown enough toward the sky to wear the same color as you do, I asked in one last try. Why, of course, Merlin humored me. For as you master those goals I set before you, so will your robe change color to reflect these accomplishments. But all this you will discover in time. Remember only to be patient, since all things come to he who waits. We had both been quiet for a few moments, when suddenly the druid's face became serious. There is, however, one more thing of importance, which I must insist of you, other than your patience, he said pensively. From this day onward until the end of your training, you must never taste the flesh of any animal. Instead, eat the fruits and grains which the Earth Mother offers to us without blood. For this is the way of Anglesey, the way of the Druids. Such a request did seem rather strange at first, but it fit in easily enough with my own preferences. Ever since my earliest days, I had possessed a natural aversion to killing anything, and even less of an inclination toward eating that which had been killed. The why of this matter I never knew, yet I managed to grow up as a vegetarian, despite having been surrounded by those who insisted that a diet deprived of animal flesh could not possibly be a healthy one. But why no meat? I asked nonetheless, hoping to acquire a convenient answer for future use. When one eats the body and blood of a fellow creature, Merlin explained, one also absorbs the energies and qualities of that creature along with it. For the blood contains the essence of what we are, be it lion or lamb, so which the lords of life have set before us. So to absorb these other qualities into our human selves is to turn away from the goal which the lords of life have set before us. Sorry, Mr. Sin, sir. That of evolving beyond the animal kingdom of Obred, and into the loftier worlds that exist beyond. And this light, each creature we devour sends us one step backward into our evolutionary past. Eat then from the fruits of the plant kingdom instead, for this will encourage growth rather than decay. Why, even the followers of the Christ have a law which says, "Thou shalt not kill," even though they have dedicated themselves to the destruction of our Druid race. So let us at least uphold the living of their own wise law. Let us practice love and abstain from needless slaughter, even where they themselves do not. Whoa, buddy. It was many years before I understood the full importance of those words. But their basic message was clear. By eating only plants, it was possible to imitate their ability to grow upward towards the sky, to become as tall as a druid, to earn the sacred sky blue robe. And so it was amid those thoughts that I first noticed the small wooden box, which Merlin had carefully placed under the sheltering shade of the oak tree. Thinking back, I remember having seen the very same box at our first meeting, suspended by leather straps which allowed the druid to journey easily with the parcel on his back. After eyeing the box for many minutes, my curiosity became intolerable. "Merlin, please tell me about the wooden box which you always carry with you," I urged. "What does it contain?" "I was wondering when you would get around to asking about my box," he replied with a sly smile. "Are you quite certain that you are now ready to learn some real magic?" In response, I walked over to where the box lay, picked it up, and deposited it carefully at Merlin's feet, where I sat patiently awaiting a reply. "Very well, little druid. Then you shall learn," came the answer, just as the hot summer sun disappeared momentarily behind a cloud, leaving a special air of mystery to the moment. The box itself is about 4 hands long, by half that in width, roughly 1 hand in depth, and was made of some light smooth wood, probably pine, which had darkened beautifully with age. There were no visible signs of nail markings anywhere to be seen, and the lid seemed expertly joined to the body without hinge or clasp of any kind. Other than that, there was nothing the least bit unusual about it in appearance. Merlin then positioned the box in such a way that I was unable to watch it being opened. Gently he lifted the lid and lay it beside him, while I looked on in utter fascination. What I did manage to see was a strange series of symbols and shapes which adorned the inside, each intricately painted in a deep blue color, which reminded me strongly of the crystal I had seen in the cave some time ago. He then lifted out a square of woad blue silk embroidered with 3 concentric circles, which he spread carefully on the grass between us. The circle of Abrad, in which we live, was created into 4 physical realms, each governed in turn by the principles of foundation, Merlin stated with authority while reaching into the box again. "See here the symbol of the first great division, the most noble realm of wind." He placed before me a long thin rod carved from white wood, into the shape of 2 serpents intertwined, bearing at their heads 3 black feathers. It was so beautifully worked that I reached out at once to hold it, but Merlin gestured me to a halt, saying, "This sacred symbol embodies the active intelligence of all mankind, but especially the druid mind, as it is constructed out of oak, our most coveted tree. And of this wood the twin serpents of good and evil uphold the 3 magical feathers of Math. For that god above all others initiates the minds of a chosen few into the mystic worlds beyond, and the realm of wind governs such things, but this rod governs the winds." Following this, there was a long pause which allowed me time to experience a little of the power emanating from this object. Merlin laid the rod upon the silk and withdrew a second wonder from the box. An object of great majesty, a cup or chalice about 1 hand in height, whose bowl was carved from 1 large oyster shell, and whose base was supported by a network of finely worked strips of silver. The iridescent shimmer of the shell combined beautifully with the highly polished metalwork, and it seemed as if I could actually hear the sound of the sea issuing forth whenever a slight breeze paused by. Merlin continued, "See now the symbol of the second great division, the most regal realm of sea," he said while holding the cup high for inspection. "This sacred object embodies the dark passive forces of the sea, and was culled from the waters about the Isle of Avalon, where the goddess and her following still dwell. The shell chalice holds the emotions of all mankind, ruled eternally by the pearl moon's pale mysteries, and the realm of the sea governs these things. But this chalice governs the seas." Again the druid paused to allow me time for reflection. The cup gave off a feeling which reminded me of my ordeal at the giant's cave, a dark, bottomless sort of sensation. "And the next realm?" I asked anxiously, feeling quite confident on account of the connections I had managed so far. Without speaking, Merlin put the chalice down, placed before me on a more familiar, placed before me, placed before me a more familiar type of artifact. My eyes widened in astonishment as I remembered that naked blades were never to be carried by a druid, not even brandished in their presence under penalty of law. For confronting me was a small but expertly wrought sickle of gold. It was a fine-looking tool with a small red gem set into the tip, in such a way that light could pass completely through it. The blade bore no symbols, but it was well polished, with not so much as a single blemish along its curved surface. "Here stands the emblem of the third great division, the most holy realm of fire," Merlin announced loudly. "This sacred implement controls the active forces of flame, which generate the creative inspiration and will of all mankind. It was forged of gold, the sun metal, capable of transmuting our souls from one state to another. And take note, in the blade has been set the red ruby of Mars, quarried from the dragon's peaks of Wales far to the north. Behold its ability to change." With that, the sickle was held out at arm's length, allowing the sun's rays to enter the fire crystal, and the dry ground beneath burst suddenly into flame. I remember being left in awe without words, never seeing such a demonstration before. As soon as the blade was withdrawn, the ground ceased burning as swiftly as it had begun. And the realm of fire governs such things, but this weapon governs the fire. He resumed, while placing the sickle with the others, and reaching back into the box. "Gaze now upon the final symbol of the 4 divisions, the most ancient realm of stone." Merlin laid before me a simple disc of blue holy stone, about the size of a large coin and just as thick, suspended from a leather cord so that it might be worn about the neck. Upon one side, a triple design was etched deep into the surface, while on the other was engraved several lines of a writing unfamiliar to me. "The last of the 4," he continued, "embodies the passive forces of stone, representing the very dust from which we were born, and to which we must eventually return. But it is also the pentacle of the Earth Mother, born of her very bones deep within warm depths, a symbol of rest and all other static forces which harness man's movement. This disk unifies the 2 principles of existence, the eternal beginning and the end. Even you, Arthur, have touched upon this wisdom, perhaps without realizing it, as I will now show you. Attend closely, boy, while I read the inscription which this holy blue stone bears. Adelftid duer sedwen du gerig verreg nuin os sereth exafartu fuer eltien mornacambarlun. Merlin glanced over at me with a knowing stare as I slowly returned his gaze in utter disbelief. What I had just heard was the same prose which had been spoken to me in Giant's Cave, and Merlin knew this absolutely, but somehow it did make sense. The realm of stone was the common element then. And now, so there I stood, trying frantically to sort out in my mind when the druid continued. "And the realm of stone governs such things. Yes, even the most sacred of our verse. But this disc governs them all." While I was still lost in thought, Merlin gathered together the 4 symbols and returned them to the box, covering each carefully with the blue silk before replacing the lid. We then sat in silence for some time. He lost in the contentment of a lesson well presented, and I dazed by the sheer mystery behind his teachings. "How can it be, Magus," I braved at last, "that I know exactly the very verse which you read from the stone disc?" Merlin was visibly pleased by my question. Upon finishing your quest at the Giant's Cave, you won a victory far greater than you realize. By overcoming the fear generated by the shades of sea and stone, you were rewarded by being given the memory of one of the three ancient spells of making, the three master triads of the Druids. With it, such forces will bow to your authority. So guard it well. The day is fast approaching when you will have much need of this gift. Just then Solomon, who had been off somewhere during all this time, flew down onto Merlin's shoulder and made another series of clicks and whistles which the Druids seemed to understand. For he stood up at once and began strapping the box onto his back. I must take my leave of you now, young Arthur, for I have just learned that someone close by has urgent need of my knowledge of herbs and simples. When I next see you, it will be as part of an important test of skill, for which you must be well prepared. Go then, assemble your own collection of sacred symbols. Such as you have seen this day, taking care that they fall under the eye of no other person, lest they be profaned. And oh yes, he held out his hand. Please surrender back to me your blue pebble, for you will have no more need of it, since you are now truly my apprentice. The next occasion on which we meet will be at a time of my calling. Now farewell. Goodbye, I called after him, but he had already disappeared, into the bushes and down the secret tunnel to the shoreline below. It was many weeks before I saw Merlin again, weeks that were filled with strange new thoughts and deeds. I remember overhearing my brother monks remark that never had they seen so changed a person in so short a time. Needless to say, their observations filled me with pride. Merlin's presence had bridged a tremendous void in my young life, left over perhaps by the parents I never knew, or by something else inborn and waiting. But whatever the case, or whatever the cause, rather, I was then truly content for the first time I could recall. Finally, life had begun to make sense. How my fellow monks must have wondered among themselves about my new robe and sudden and defiant change in my eating habits. But if they did wonder, word of it never once reached my ears. No doubt the influence of the abbot, I reasoned. And strangely enough, my presence was no longer insisted upon at the daily chapel masses, a change which suited me well, busy as I was with new projects. My daily quota of chores still remained, yet they left me with more than enough time to search the materials necessary to create my druidic symbols, and the box to contain them, so determined was I to be ready for whatever adventure Merlin's next visit might bring. And the weeks which followed, my new lessons seemed to become a natural part of my daily thought. I took great delight in fitting everything into one of the four great realms. My food, my collections of rock and leaf, even the people around me. The true voyage of discovery, Merlin once quoted. Lies not in seeking new landscapes, but in having new eyes. The true voyage of discovery, Merlin once quoted, lies not in seeking new landscapes, but in having new eyes. Powerful words. Looking back on those early years at Tentacle, nothing within memory ever sparked quite the same creative zest or enthusiasm toward life as did that solitary glimpse within Merlin's wooden box. Join us next time, friends, for the 4 symbols of mastery, and we'll learn about those. Now, in magical orders, it is true that they will give you different colored robes as you graduate up the ranks from apprentice to master. However, I have no ability to judge your magical abilities or what you're able to accomplish. However, I am glad to teach you any magical lessons that you wish to learn. And so our training continues. Think of this like Hogwarts distance learning. I, Ryu the Kitsune, will teach you magic. You can expect from me that I will be your teacher, and I will expect from you that you will be a diligent student who practices their lessons. Anyway, that's all the time we have for today. I hope you enjoyed hearing this story from the 21 Lessons of Merlin. I love you all. I believe in you. You can and you will achieve your dreams. And I will see you all very soon, my friends. Have a great day.